Alina Rose sat in the university library, her fingers trembling as she read the news article on her laptop screen. The headline felt like a knife through her heart. Rose family empire collapses, millions lost in investment scandal. Her father's construction company, built over 20 years, had crumbled overnight due to a fraudulent business partner who disappeared with everything. Her phone buzzed with another call from her mother. Alina knew without answering that it would be more bad news. The family home was being seized. Her college tuition money was gone. Her parents were facing possible jail time for crimes they never committed. At 22, Alina had lived a sheltered life, protected by loving parents who gave her everything. Now that protection was gone. The mysterious offer 2 days later, Alina was packing her few remaining belongings when her father called her into his study. His once confident face looked aged by years in just a few days. Sitting across from him was a man Alina had never seen before, tall, impeccably dressed, with sharp features and the coldest gray eyes she had ever encountered. "Alina, this is Damien Cross," her father said, his voice heavy with defeat. "He has made us an offer." Damien Cross. Even Alina, who rarely followed business news, knew that name. At 28, he was one of the youngest billionaires in the country, having built his technology empire from nothing. His company, Cross Dynamics, dominated the tech industry with ruthless efficiency. People called him brilliant but heartless, a man who treated everything like a business transaction. "Rose," Damien said, his voice as cold as his eyes. "I understand your family is facing significant financial difficulties." Alina nodded, unable to speak. Something about his presence filled the room with tension. "I have a proposition that could solve all your problems," he continued, studying her face like she was a business report. "I need a wife for certain business and social obligations. You need financial security for your family. I propose a marriage contract." The words hit Alina like a physical blow. "A marriage contract," she repeated slowly. "A business arrangement," Damien clarified. "I will pay all your family's debts, restore your father's reputation, and provide a substantial monthly allowance. In return, you will be my wife in name, in appearance for public events, and social obligations." Alina's father looked at the floor. Unable to meet her eyes, her mother had started crying softly in the corner. They were asking her to sacrifice herself to save them. "The cold truth I don't understand," Alina whispered. "You could marry anyone. Why me?" Damien's expression remained unchanged. "Because you have something most women in my social circle lack: authenticity. My research shows you have no hidden agenda, no family connections trying to use me for business deals. You're naive enough to honor an agreement without trying to manipulate it for personal gain." His words stung. He saw her innocence as a commodity, to be purchased. "What exactly would this marriage involve?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "You would live in my house, attend social functions as my wife, and maintain the appearance of a happy marriage. Your personal life would remain your own. I have no interest in a real relationship." Alina felt like she was suffocating. This man was offering to buy her like a business asset. But looking at her parents' desperate faces, she realized she had no choice. Her family would lose everything without this arrangement. The wedding that was intoned a week later, Alina stood in a small courthouse wearing a simple white dress, about to marry a complete stranger. There were no flowers, no celebration, no family present. Damien had insisted on a private ceremony with only the required witnesses. As they exchanged vows, Alina felt like she was watching someone else's life. Damien recited his words with the same emotion he might use to read a business contract. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, his brief kiss felt more like signing a document than a romantic gesture. "Congratulations, Mrs. Krause," he said afterward, the title sounding strange and foreign. Alina Rose was gone. In her place stood Alina Krause, wife to one of the most powerful men in the country, bound to him by contract rather than love. Life. In a golden cage, Damien's mansion was more like a museum than a home. Everything was perfectly arranged, expensively decorated, and completely lacking in warmth. Alina's new bedroom was larger than her family's entire apartment had been, but it felt like a luxurious prison. Mrs. Cross, the housekeeper Margaret, greeted her formally. "Mr. Cross has left instructions for your daily schedule." Your personal shopper will arrive tomorrow to update your wardrobe for upcoming social events. Lena nodded numbly. Even her clothes would be chosen by someone else. Now her first week as Mrs. Cross passed in a blur of confusion and loneliness. Damien left early every morning and returned late each night. They ate dinner together twice, conversations limited to brief discussions about upcoming social obligations. He treated her politely but distantly, like a business associate rather than a wife. The first crack in the ice, their first public appearance together, was at a charity gala for children's hospitals. Alina wore a stunning black gown chosen by her personal shopper and jewelry worth more than her family's former house. She felt like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Remember, Damien said as their car approached the venue, "We are happily married. Smile, hold my arm, laugh at my jokes, even if they aren't funny." The performance began the moment they stepped onto the red carpet. Damien transformed into the perfect husband, attentive, charming, protective. His hand on her back felt possessive, yet gentle. When photographers called for them to kiss, he pulled her close and kissed her softly, sending unexpected shivers through her body. "You're doing well," he murmured in her ear, his breath warm against her skin. For a moment, Lena almost believed it was real, unexpected kindness during the gala dinner. Lena noticed a young girl at a nearby table crying quietly without thinking. She excused herself and approached the child, who was attending with her adoptive family. "Hello, sweetheart," Alina said gently. "I'm Alina. What's your name?" Lily, the girl whispered. "I'm scared of all these people." Alina spent the next 20 minutes talking with Lily, making her laugh and feel comfortable. She didn't notice Damien watching from across the room, something unreadable in his expression. Later, as they drove home, Damien surprised her by speaking first. "You were good with that child," he said quietly. "She reminded me of myself when I was young," Alina replied. "Sometimes adults forget how overwhelming the world can feel to a child." Damien was quiet for a long moment. "I'd forgotten that," he said, so softly she almost didn't hear him. The mystery deepens as days turned into weeks. Alina began to notice small things about her mysterious husband. Despite his cold exterior, he donated millions to children's charities anonymously. He worked 8-hour days but never missed sending flowers to his elderly secretary on her birthday. His refrigerator was covered with thank you letters from families. His company's scholarship program had helped. One evening, Alina discovered him in his study, looking exhausted and vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. Financial reports were scattered across his desk, and he was rubbing his temples as if fighting a headache. "Are you okay?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. For a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped, and she saw something raw and tired in his eyes. "Just business problems," he said, his walls going back up immediately. But Alina had seen enough to know there was much more to Damien Cross than the cold businessman everyone believed him to be. Beneath the ice, she sensed something wounded and lonely, something that called to her heart despite every logical reason to keep her distance. As she lay in her bed that night, Alina realized her life had become more complicated than she ever imagined. She had married a stranger for money, but that stranger was becoming less strange every day. The question was whether she was brave enough to discover who Damien Cross really was beneath all his carefully constructed walls. The contract had brought them together. But Alina was beginning to suspect it would take something much more powerful to truly unite them. Something that scared her more than poverty or losing her family ever had. Something that felt dangerously close to love. 3 months into their marriage contract, Lena had settled into a routine of elegant loneliness. She attended charity events. On Damien's arm, played the perfect wife for business dinners, and spent her days in the beautiful emptiness of his mansion. They were polite strangers sharing a house, nothing more. That changed on a rainy Tuesday evening when Alina decided to explore the parts of Damien's mansion she had never seen before. Most of the 3rd floor was locked, but one door stood slightly open. Inside, she discovered something that made her breath catch. It was a child's bedroom. Perfectly preserved, but covered in dust. Toy cars lined the shelves, superhero posters decorated the walls, and a small bed sat unmade, as if waiting for someone to return. On the nightstand was a framed photo of a young boy with Damien's gray eyes, laughing as he hugged a beautiful woman who could only be his mother. "You shouldn't," Be in here. Alina spun around to find Damien standing in the doorway, his face a mask of controlled fury and pain. I'm sorry, she whispered. Ooh. The door was open, and I didn't know this room is off limits, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Everything in this house is off limits, except what I specifically show you. But Alina had seen too much to simply walk away. The pain in his eyes, the careful preservation of this childhood space, the way his hands shook slightly as he spoke, it all told a story of loss and grief that explained so much about the man. She had married the truth about Damien Cross that night. Alina couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the little boy in the photograph and the man Damien had become. Finally, she made a decision that would change everything between them. She found him in his study at midnight, still working despite the late hour. He looked up when she entered, his expression guarded. I researched you tonight, she said quietly, sitting in the chair across from his desk. I should have done it before we married, but I was too overwhelmed to think clearly. Damien's jaw tightened. And what did you discover, Mrs. Cross? You weren't always alone? Alina said gently. You had a younger brother named Jake, and a mother who loved you both very much. The silence that followed was deafening. Damien's hands had stopped moving on his keyboard, and she could see the war between his need for control and his buried emotions playing out across his features. They died in a car accident when you were 19, Alina continued. Your brother was only 8 years old. You were driving. Stop. The word came out like a gunshot, but Alina couldn't stop now. Accident wasn't your fault. The other driver was drunk and ran a red light. But you blamed yourself anyway. That's when you started building walls around your heart, isn't it? The moment everything changed, Damien stood up so abruptly that his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. His carefully controlled facade was cracking, and Alina could see the devastating pain he had been hiding for 9 years. You don't know anything about me, he said, his voice breaking slightly. You don't know what it's like to lose everything that matters in one moment. To have a little boy look up to you as his hero and then fail him when he needs you most. Alina rose from her chair and took a step toward him. You're right. I don't know what that feels like, but I know what it's like to build walls to protect yourself from more pain. I've been doing it since my parents lost everything. She took another step closer. I also know that Jake wouldn't want you to live like this. That little boy who thought you were a hero wouldn't want his big brother to be alone and miserable for the rest of his life. Damien's composure finally shattered. The grief he had buried for 9 years erupted in a broken sob that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. Outthinking, Alina closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. He resisted for a moment, then collapsed against her, burying his face in her shoulder as 9 years of suppressed sorrow poured out of him. Alina held him tightly, tears streaming down her own face as she felt the full weight of his pain. A new beginning, when Damien finally pulled away. His eyes were red, but clearer than Alina had ever seen them. The walls that had defined him for so long had developed their first major crack. I'm sorry, he said roughly. You shouldn't have to see me like this. Yes, I should, Alina replied firmly. If we're going to live together, even in a business arrangement, we should at least be honest with each other. Damien studied her face for a long moment. You're not what I expected, Alina. What did you expect? Someone who would be content? To take my money and ignore everything else. Someone who wouldn't care enough to dig deeper. Alina smiled sadly. I'm not very good at ignoring people who are in pain. Small steps forward the next morning, Alina woke to find fresh coffee waiting in the kitchen and a note from Damien. Thank you for last night. I forgot what it felt like to have someone care. It was a small gesture, but it marked the beginning of a gradual shift in their relationship. Damien started coming home earlier, joining Alina for dinner more often. Their conversations moved beyond business obligations to books, travel, dreams they had abandoned long ago. Alina learned that Damien had wanted to be a teacher before family tragedy forced him to take over the family business at 19. He discovered that she had dreamed of opening a small art gallery before her family's financial crisis changed everything. Do you still paint? He asked one evening as they walked through his extensive gardens. I haven't since college, Alina admitted. My supplies were sold with everything else. The next day, Alina found a complete art studio waiting in one of the mansion's unused rooms, stocked with professional-grade supplies and flooded with perfect natural light. I thought you might want to try again, Damien said when she found him to thank him. It was the first gift he had given her that wasn't part of their business arrangement. and Alina felt something warm and dangerous blooming in her chest. The walls come down as Alina began painting again. Something in their house changed. Her artwork brought color and life to spaces that had been sterile showcases. Damien would sometimes stop to watch her work, and she would catch glimpses of the man he might have been if tragedy hadn't hardened him so young. One evening, she was painting a landscape of the gardens when Damien appeared with 2 cups of coffee. "You've brought something back to this house," he said quietly, sitting beside her easel. "What do you mean?" "Life. Warmth. Things I thought I didn't want or need anymore." Alina set down her brush and looked at him. "Everyone needs those things, Damien. You just convinced yourself you didn't deserve them." "Maybe I don't," he said. "Maybe some people are meant to be alone." "That's not true," Alina replied with sudden passion. "You have so much love inside you. See it in how you help those families. Through your foundation, how you've preserved your brother's room. How you've protected me, even though I'm just a business arrangement to you." "Are you?" he asked, his gray eyes intense. "Just a business arrangement?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities that terrified and thrilled Alina in equal measure. 3 months ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Looking into his eyes, she couldn't find the words to lie. The first kiss that night, Alina couldn't concentrate on her painting. Damien's question echoed in her mind, forcing her to confront feelings she had been trying to ignore. She had married him for money to save her family, but somewhere along the way, her heart had become involved. She found him on the terrace, staring out at the moonlit gardens, with a glass of wine in his hand. He looked younger in the silvery light, less guarded. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, joining him at the railing. "I keep thinking about what you said earlier," he admitted, "about having love inside me. I'm not sure I remember how to love someone, Alina. It's been so long since I let anyone close." Alina's heart ached for him. "Love isn't something you remember how to do," she said softly. "It's something you feel. And when you feel it, you just know." He turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "Do you feel it?" The question was barely a whisper, but it seemed to echo through the night air. Alina's pulse quickened as she realized they had reached a crossroads. She could lie, maintain the safe distance their contract provided, or she could tell him the truth and risk everything. "Yes," she whispered back, "I do." The confession hung between them for a heartbeat before Damien stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face with infinite gentleness. "Alina," he breathed, and then his lips were on hers. This kiss was nothing like their brief cold wedding kiss, or the performed kisses at public events. This was real, full of longing and tenderness, and the promise of something beautiful and terrifying. Alina melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This changes everything," Damien said, his forehead resting against hers. "I know," Alina replied. "Are you ready for everything to change?" Damien's answer was another kiss, deeper and more desperate than the first. And Alina knew that their business arrangement had just become something infinitely more complicated and wonderful. Their contract had brought them together, but love was about to transform them both in ways neither had imagined possible. In the weeks following their first real kiss, Alina and Damien's relationship blossomed like flowers after a long winter. The cold businessman she had married was gradually replaced by a man capable of incredible tenderness and passion. He would bring her coffee in the morning, steal kisses while she painted, and hold her close as they talked late into the night about dreams and fears they had never shared with anyone. Alina's art was flourishing too. Her paintings had evolved. From simple landscapes to vibrant expressions of joy and love, Damien had arranged for a local gallery owner to see her work. And Alina was thrilled to learn that her first solo exhibition was being planned for the following month. "Proud of you," Damien told her one morning as they reviewed the gallery's proposal together. "You're extraordinarily talented." "I never would have discovered that again without you," Alina replied, reaching for his hand. "You gave me back a part of myself I thought was lost forever." As their fingers intertwined, Alina marveled at how natural it felt. They had moved beyond their business arrangement into something real and beautiful. Damien was learning to love, and Alina was learning that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the most precious destinations. Shadows from the past there. Happiness was interrupted on a Tuesday morning when Damien received a call that drained all color from his face. Alina watched from across the breakfast table as his expression hardened into the cold mask she hadn't seen in weeks. "What is it?" she asked when he hung up. "Nathan Morrison is back in town," Damien said grimly. Alina had never heard the name before, but the way Damien said it made her blood run cold. "Who is Nathan Morrison?" Damien's jaw tightened. My former business partner. The man who tried to destroy everything I built and nearly succeeded." Over the next hour, Damien explained the complicated history. Nathan Morrison had been his closest friend and business partner in the early days of Cross Dynamics. When Nathan's gambling addiction spiraled out of control, he had embezzled millions from their company and tried to frame Damien for the theft. Only Damien's careful documentation had saved him from prison, but the betrayal had reinforced every wall around his heart. "He disappeared after the investigation," Damien said. "I assumed he would never be foolish enough to return." "What does he want now?" Lena asked, though she already feared the answer. "According to my security team, he's been asking questions about you, about our marriage." The threat emerges. Alina's sense of security shattered completely when she returned from her art class that afternoon to find Nathan Morrison sitting in their living room, calmly sipping tea with Margaret, the housekeeper. "Alina Cross," he said, rising with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're even more beautiful than the photographs suggest." Nathan Morrison was handsome in a smooth, dangerous way. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his expensive suit immaculate. But there was something predatory in his green eyes that made Elena's skin crawl. "I don't believe we've been introduced," Elena said carefully, staying near the doorway. "Nathan Morrison," he replied with a slight bow. "An old friend of your husband's. I was hoping we could have a little chat." Elena's training in self-defense, insisted upon by Damien after their marriage, kicked in. She noted the exits, the distance. To the panic button Damien had installed, the heavy crystal vase on the nearby table that could serve as a weapon if needed. "I think you should leave," she said firmly. Nathan's smile widened. "Oh, but we have so much to discuss. Your husband owes me a considerable sum of money, and I think you might be the key to collecting it." A dangerous game before Alina could respond. Damien's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Get away from my wife." Alina had never heard such controlled fury in his voice. Damien stood in the doorway, his entire body radiating dangerous energy. His security team flanked him, but Nathan seemed unconcerned. "Damien," Nathan said pleasantly, "you look well. Marriage appears to agree with you. You have 30 seconds to explain why you're in my house before I have you arrested for breaking and entering." Damien replied coldly. Nathan laughed. "Breaking and entering? Your lovely housekeeper invited me in. We were just getting acquainted. Your wife and I." Damien moved to Elena's side, his arms sliding protectively around her waist. She could feel the tension in his muscles, like a predator ready to strike. "What do you want, Nathan?" "What I've always wanted," Nathan replied. "My fair share of Cross Dynamics. $50 million to be precise." "The amount you stole from me when you destroyed my reputation? You stole from our company," Damien said. "I have proof." "Proof can be manipulated," Nathan said with a shrug. "And I have new evidence that suggests you framed me to steal my portion of the business." Alina knew he was lying, but the confidence in his voice was chilling. "You have 48 hours to transfer the money," Nathan continued. "If you don't, I'll release information to the media that will destroy everything you've built, your business, reputation, your marriage, your precious wife's safety." The threat against Alina made Damien's control snap. He lunged forward, but his security team restrained him. "Touch her and I'll kill you," Damien growled. Nathan's smile turned genuinely amused. "How romantic, but unnecessary. I have no intention of harming Alina. She's much too valuable as leverage." The plan unfolds after Nathan left. Damien immediately called his lawyer and tripled Elena's security detail. But Elena could see the old walls rebuilding in his eyes, the warmth they had shared cooling under the pressure of protecting her. "This is my fault," he said as they sat in his study that night. "I brought you into this world, and now you're in danger because of my past." "Past," Elena corrected. "We're married, Damien. Your problems are my problems." "No," he said sharply. This marriage was supposed to be a simple business arrangement. You were never supposed to be at risk. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. What are you saying? Damien couldn't meet her eyes. I'm saying maybe we should end this. Transfer enough money to secure your family's future and get you somewhere safe, away from all of this. The words hit Elena like physical blows. After everything they had shared, all the walls that had come down between them, he was still willing to push her away to protect her. You don't get to make that decision alone, she said fiercely. I'm not a business asset, you can just relocate. For efficiency, love's true test. The next 24 hours were tense and difficult. Damien threw himself into work trying to find a legal solution to Nathan's threats while maintaining distance from Elena. But Elena refused to be pushed aside. She spent the day researching Nathan Morrison, using resources Damien had taught her to access. What she discovered made her blood run cold, but also gave her an idea. That evening, she found Damien in his study, surrounded by legal documents and looking more defeated than she had ever seen him. I found something, she said, setting a folder. On his desk, inside were bank records showing that Nathan had continued his gambling even after leaving the country. He owed money to dangerous people, which explained his desperate need for a quick payout from Damien. This proves he's lying about having new evidence, Elena said. If he had real proof against you, he would have used it years ago. He's desperate and running out of time. Damien studied the documents, hope flickering in his eyes for the first time all day. There's more, Elena continued. I think we can turn his desperation against him. The counterattack Elena's plan was risky, but brilliant. They would arrange a meeting with Nathan, ostensibly to discuss the money transfer. But instead of giving him what he wanted, they would present him with evidence of his current illegal activities and offer him choice: disappear permanently or face prosecution for his new crimes. It's too dangerous, Damien argued. If something goes wrong, then we face it together, Elena interrupted. I'm not running away from this, and neither are you. We're stronger together than we are apart. The meeting was set for the next evening at a neutral location. It's a high-end restaurant where Nathan would feel safe, but Damien's security could maintain control. Elena dressed carefully for the encounter, choosing an elegant blue dress that made her feel confident and strong. Damien couldn't hide his admiration as they prepared to leave. You're incredible, he said, pulling her close. I've never known anyone as brave as you. I'm terrified, Elena admitted. But I'm not losing what we have because of him. The final confrontation, the restaurant meeting, went exactly as Elena had hoped. Nathan arrived confident and smug, expecting an easy victory. But when Damien presented the evidence of his current crimes instead of a money transfer, Nathan's facade cracked. You can't prove any of this, he blustered. But Elena could see the fear in his eyes. We don't have to prove it, Elena said calmly. We just have to give our evidence to the right people. People you owe money to. People who don't appreciate being lied to about your assets. Nathan's face went white as he realized the implications. If his creditors learned he had been hiding potential income sources, his life would be in immediate danger. What do you want? He asked, his earlier confidence completely gone. Disappear, Damien said simply. Leave the country tonight and never come back. Never contact us. Never mention Elena's name to anyone. Never threaten my family again. And if I refuse, Elena leaned forward. Us? Then we make some phone calls, and you won't have to worry about us anymore. You'll have much bigger problems. Nathan left the restaurant a broken man, his threats empty, and his leverage gone. Elena and Damien sat in the aftermath, hands clasped tightly together across the table. It's over, Damien said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Yes, Elena agreed. But more importantly, we faced it together. Damien lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles. You saved us. I was ready to push you away, to sacrifice our happiness to keep you safe. That's not how love works, Elena said softly. Love doesn't run from danger. It stands together and fights for what matters. That night, as they held each other close in bed for the first time since becoming truly husband and wife, Damien spoke the words Elena had been longing to hear. I love you, he whispered against her hair. Not because of our contract, not because of obligation, but because you taught me that love isn't a weakness to be avoided. It's a strength to be embraced. Elena turned in his arms, seeing her own joy reflected in his eyes. I love you too. All of you. The broken parts, and the healed parts, and everything in between. Ever after, 6 months later, Elena's art exhibition was the social event of the season. Her paintings, inspired by love and healing and new beginnings, drew crowds and critical acclaim. But the moment Elena treasured most was seeing Damien in the crowd, his eyes shining with pride and love as he watched her speak about her work. After the last guest had left, they stood together in the empty gallery, surrounded by Elena's vibrant creations. Do you remember what you told me the night we first kissed? Damien asked, pulling her close. That love isn't something you remember how to do, Elena recalled. It's something you feel. You were right, he said, spinning her around in the empty space. And I feel it every day, every moment, every breath. Elena laughed as he set her down, her heart full to overflowing. What happens now? Now, Damien said, dropping to one knee and pulling out a ring that wasn't part of any contract. I ask you to marry me again, not for business this time, but for love. For the rest of our lives. Through tears of joy, Elena said yes, and as Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, she marveled at the journey that had brought them here. A business arrangement had become a love story, walls had become bridges, and two broken people had found a way to heal together. The cold billionaire had learned to love, and in doing so had discovered that love was the only thing that truly mattered. And Elena, who had started as a girl with no choices, had become a woman who chose love every single day. Their contract had an expiration date, but their love would last forever.